Gullah Geechee people are the descendants of West and Central Africans who were brought to the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida for the purposes of cultivating rice. How the culture itself was then formed is about our journey through the Middle Passage. A number of different, spiritual ideas and languages are all kind of forced together in this tight, packed, dark space where a new identity is really, and so the thing that is significant about Gullah Geechee culture is that our culture has been able to hold on closest to our African connections.
You go to any port city and you see those cobblestone streets, you immediately feel a connection, right? Like you know that we are all connected. You know that this is where our people were trafficked and transported.
So you have to think about Gullah Geechee as the initial formation of African American culture. And then everything else is a derivative from there.
Growing up Gullah, we were taught to not speak in dialect, speak properly in schools, and even all of our teachers were Gullah, and everybody kind of grew up, needing to be fixed or wanting to assimilate. But our culture is something to be proud of.
In a modern sense, young people, we are using the principle of Sankofa. We are reaching back to understand what has happened in the past to begin building a new future. Gullah Geechee advocacy across the corridor, the main theme is really going to be around land, whether that is zoning issues that are happening in Sapelo, whether that is the Cultural Protective Overlay, the CPO that's happening in St. Helena Island, whether there's an attempt to put a high-rise on Atlantic Beach, whether there's cemeteries that need to make sure that they're not encroached by new development happening in the Wando area. Our main issue is land and making sure that we create protections to ensure that we hold on to our land, because without the land, it's impossible to tell these stories.
The land is why we were brought here, because you couldn't cultivate rice or cotton or indigo or sugarcane or all of those things that became cash crops that relied on our expertise and our physical labor. Gullah is a land-based culture. So when we lose access to our land or access to public lands, then I feel like we lose part of ourselves.
Welcome to Marshview Community Organic Farm, Mary Jenkins Plantation. His name is Robert Green. He's my great-great-grandfather. And in 1865, he purchased 20 acres of land, and this was part of that 20 acres of land. We are a demonstration site for indigo. That means that we will teach others how to grow indigo and process it, as well as to find economic wealth out of growing it on their farms. My goal and our goal is to have some of our farmers that have land just sitting around to put some indigo on it and have a processing site here on the island where only thing they will have to do is to grow it. Someone will come and process and harvest it and take it to a processing facility, and they will do whatever they want to do with it, create the powder, the clay, the liquid, and just give them a check.
On the Frazier side, I'm a descendant of Garrison Frazier. Many people that don't know the story of 40 acres and a mule, like he was the father, you might as well say, of that, and the reason it existed, and the reason the Gullah culture was able to thrive and exist in the area. When he was asked by General Sherman, what do the formerly enslaved, now freed blacks of the area, what would they like to have? And he said, we just want to have land be uninterrupted. We want to govern our own areas. We want to till our land, and we don't want to have any dominance by a white power structure. If we would be left alone, we could run and do our own things. And we all got land at that time. One of the other things that I'm advocating for, I want to create a Gullah overlay protection, in the sense that in our neighborhoods, we are restricted from owning and operating businesses. And a lot of people feel their land is also a burden because of taxes. And a lot of people are restricted because of heirs property, which has been a dream for investors who want to come in and take away, land that's still owned en masse by natives, by Gullah natives.
The Gullah land is in a incredible crisis mode. And we are at a point where we desperately need to resolve the heirs property issue. If an ancestor purchased land late 1800s, early 1900s, whatever the date is, by now they may have hundreds, if not thousands of heirs that are all entitled to a percentage of the land that exists. And because of that, a lot of people don't even know that they're living on heirs property or that they have heirs property in the family until there is a crisis. Someone dies, or there's a sign put up on the property saying that the property is, going up for the tax sale or something like that. The fact that the majority of Black land loss in the United States, it's close to 90%, can be attributed to heirs property issues.
And then you see a person like my neighbor with her house that was her grandmother lived in. Her taxes are assessed at the same value as the $1 million house taxes. So there's a disconnect there. There's an inequity there that we need to make some policy changes to make that right. And we want to actually have a moratorium on Gullah Geechee land, that we don't pay any more taxes because they have done enough to build this country with their blood, sweat, and tears. Their ancestors now, their descendants now, shouldn't have to pay no more on the land that they are living on.
There are people who are moving in and don't know the history of the island, don't know the fact that Gullah exists, that the culture has been here, that it is part of why the land that attracted them, the beauty of this land exists. It exists like this because the Gullah took care of it, because the Gullah love the land. They could have flattened everything and made this into open farmland, but they didn't. They loved it and they cherished the land and they protected it. And that's why people are here today.
There's an auction every year, and in that auction, last year we started off with over 300 Gullah Geechee land owners on that list. 300. Just before the auction started, I think it was probably about 50 to 100 left on the list. Penn Center helped some, we did. St. Helena Gullah Project helped, Marshview helped. We had a fundraiser at Penn, and we raised money and we solicit money from other organizations as also private donors. And we saved about 25 families from losing their land, which most of them had their homes on their land.
Out of Low Country Gullah came the Low Country Gullah Foundation. And the Low Country Gullah Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we specifically work towards preserving and protecting and educating people about heirs property issues. And so when there are situations that come up where someone can't afford their taxes because the taxes went up because of resort development or tourism or whatever the case may be, we step in and we assist them so that they can hold on to their property. We also try to identify why they're not able to pay for their taxes, and based on whatever the situation is, provide them with some kind of structure, maybe a budget or monetary support educationally, so that they can have some financial literacy moving forward.
I visited Harris Neck, Georgia. They have a commemorative event in July. And I learned the story of this community that was displaced in 1942 after a German U-boat popped up on the shores of Georgia. And for the government, it freaked them out because they were unprepared. And so they decided to build a string of military installations along the coast. And Harris Neck, Georgia was a site that they decided that they needed an airfield. And so Harris Neck is a Gullah Geechee community. They had purchased their property during Reconstruction. There were about 75 families on over 2,800 acres of property. For many of them, whether they were able to read the notices that came or not, for many of them, it was a knock on the door and saying, grab what you can and get out. What has happened after they tried to build this airfield, our Gullah Geechee people, we are along the water, the ground is soft. And so the airstrip was built on soft sand and it sank and it started to crack. And so it was never operable. And so instead of giving these people back the ability to cultivate generational wealth, DNR has taken over the property. They've had to chain themselves to the fencing of their cemetery in order to make a point that they should always have access to the cemetery. This community is very resilient.
My name is Stanley B. Walker. I am a descendant of the African slaves from Sierra Leone. We're considered Geechee Gullah, and I'm a straight descendant because my people came straight from Leon, straight to Sapelo. So we lost a lot of our tradition, but we try to keep some alive. For the herbs, a lot of them couldn't afford to go to the doctors, so they learned how to forage, what plant was good for cold, fever, rash. That's how they kept themselves well. And a lot of herbs that they found and they came along the coast, they could have found in Africa. Like the life everlasting. We call it life everlasting. You take somebody from Africa, they call it life may last. Sassafras, they know what the sassafras root was good for. Bay leaf, magnolia, mullein. There's a lot of young people now starting to get into fishing. So by learning how to make a cast net and go out there casting, learning how your ancestors used to smoke the fish and preserve it, that's something that they can pass on to their children and go on for generations. That's how you keep a culture going. And so by me being one of the last ones, I love talking about it. I love teaching people. I'm trying to teach this one, but
you're not trying to teach me no casting.
She's one of them students that's hard to deal with.
We have to start with an understanding of where we came from and why it's important. One of the things that I really work hard to convey to our young people is that the technologies and the knowledge and information that you need to go forward now, they call it STEM, they call it STEAM, they call whatever they're calling it, that is a part of your DNA. The reasons why West African peoples were brought to this area in mass to grow and cultivate rice, it wasn't about just putting a seed in the ground. There was a whole technology that came along with it that they had and knew and understood and created and developed.